Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Penny Lane Podcast with Al Hill, the Co-Chief Financial Officer of Rose Hill Acquisition Corporation. This episode is presented by Pennies Going in Raw.
The stock market is hotter than ever right now, and traders are taking advantage. But what does that mean for the people who still haven't started trading? The market can be a little intimidating at first, but you don't have to be alone in the learning experience. We at the Pennies Going in Raw podcast are here to help you. I'm Dan, and with my co-host Hugh Henney, we make the stock market a fun but informative experience for our listeners. We offer knowledge for all levels of traders, from beginners to those who do it full time. On PGIR, we discuss up-to-date news about the stock market and interview other traders who all started out just like us and made it big. You'll hear from Hugh and other multi-millionaire traders, founders and CEOs of companies, FinTwit superstars, and even professional athletes. Have you ever thought about investing your hard-earned cash but don't know where to start? Do you have money just sitting in your savings account collecting dust? We were all there once too. Listen to Pennies Going in Raw on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, Al. Welcome to the Penny Lane Podcast.
Thank you. Glad to be on and to finally get the chance to chat. I know it's been a few weeks we've been trying to get this going. So
for sure. So lucky to have you. Justin, hi. Welcome to the Penny Lane Podcast.
Hey, Blaine. Thanks for having me as well. I really appreciate it.
Glad to have you back. It's been a little while, but hope you settle right in.
Yeah, we'll see. I think I've lost some of the interviewing mojo as well as the current events when it comes to the financial market. So we'll see how this goes.
We'll just dust off the wheels there.
That's right.
Perfect. Well, Al, I really wanted to have you on because we got to go to the IPO of Rose Hill, which is your company, which was I kept calling it like my Super Bowl. That was the coolest. And it was my birthday. I mean, that was like the just best, coolest experience. And
your birthday was the real celebration. So
Right. We had all those people there, the confetti, it was for me.
She did not raise the same type of money on her birthday that you did. I just want the record to show.
Oh my gosh. I was trading on my birthday and lost like $3,000. So
no
I didn't raise any money, but did lose a little bit of money. So not only was I so impressed with everything you did there and the IPO and everything you've done, but I really enjoyed when we first met, just sitting down and talking to you and hearing your story. I thought that was so impressive. So I'd love to start there, if that's cool with you. And I also was telling Justin that we went to the same high school.
We did in Atlanta. I'm originally from Dallas, but I did go to high school at Westminster in Atlanta, which was an awesome experience. I actually recently went last week to a young alumni, and I technically have my 5-year reunion coming up December 23rd that got pushed back a year for COVID. So, I'm involved.
Quick question. Blaine, are you also considered a young alumni?
So this year's my 20th reunion, and I'm on the committee, so I'm kind of a big deal. We're looking at a brewery, as every single reunion, looking at a brewery. I was once a young alumni, but they sort of like phase the word young out as you get older, you know?
They're very diplomatic about it, definitely.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know Blaine, where you want me to start, but of course the Rose Hill is a story in its own. I think maybe there's a little background in maybe how myself and my business partner, Juan Jose, first met that provides a little bit of the story around, how we ended up doing Rose Hill. I don't, whatever you like. If you want to jump straight to the financials, we can do that.
No, I'd love to talk about how you guys met. Also, Justin is an incredible tennis player, so I want to hit on that. So why don't you tell us how you guys met?
Well, I think the tennis is an important part of it. So Justin, I've told Blaine, but I played a lot of tennis growing up. I was doing before and after school, 4 hours a day to sometimes up to 7 hours a day, the whole 9 yards. So played a lot of different sports. It's kind of a part of the fabric of the family. My younger brother is a football player. He was playing football up at UPenn. My sister's a soccer player. She actually She plays on the Westminster high school team. So she's still in high school and she's in recruiting now. But I think it's a good place to start in, throughout kind of the beginning of this story is I was a tennis player, and that's how I got recruited to Cornell. And so I ended up, going up to Cornell where I wanted to be somewhere that was a mix of, a great academic institution, but also, had the potential to still play professional tennis and play at that level if possible. And actually, interestingly enough, my now business partner, a guy named Juan Jose Rosas, had a very similar thought process. So I was not nearly as good a junior tennis player as him. He was 19 in the world in junior tennis.
Wow.
He beat the current 3 in the world, Tsitsipas, in juniors. He used to play doubles with a guy named Lloyd Harris, who quarterfinaled the U.S. Open. So very, very good tennis player. And so I went to Cornell my freshman fall, and the program was very good, but it hadn't quite reached peak. And I was playing all fall. It's an interesting process where, I think with the D1 athletics, you're up at 5 a.m. running the slopes and you're doing the afternoon. So I think one of the interesting things is the discipline of that helped. And I think it shows over when we look at kind of our final business and how we got going. And I'll get to that a little bit later. But JJ and I, to say the least, at the beginning of this process, we're logging easy 120-hour weeks for probably a month in order to get our business going. And I think that really started for both of us in our tennis careers where, part of the expectation and part of the fabric of it and that level is, you do all the things you need to do with your academics and whatever else. And then you also, do your 4 or 5 hours of tennis. And so I was playing, and then JJ actually transferred in from a Peruvian university in the spring. And that's where we first met and got to know each other. I think it's an important place to start the story because we were teammates before we were roommates, and then we worked together, and then we became business partners. And so we were playing tennis together. I just happened to live. I had a 2-bedroom apartment set up, and my roommate had fallen through. And so JJ decided to come on and join me that following year, my sophomore year. And so we lived together, and we would discuss, through the middle of the night, we would discuss, different stuff that we thought we would potentially be doing in the future. And, we were both looking at some different finance stuff. I actually spent my freshman summer playing professional tennis touring in Europe, which was a really awesome experience. But while I did that, JJ decided to go and work for an investment bank called Chardin, which is based out in New York. And that's really important because Chardin is a principal SPAC underwriter and investor, as well as a healthcare investment bank. And so they've been doing principal SPAC underwriting investing since 2003. And the SPAC as a product has been around since the 1990s, which for the listeners listening in, I am the co-founder of Rose Hill Acquisition Corp., which is a $143 million SPAC listed on NASDAQ. It is Blaine and her mother joined us for the IPO, which was very nice of them. And just importantly, to get a little background on that, it's essentially an investment fund that you acquire a business. It's actually excuse me 1 minute. It's actually a reverse merger. So you acquire 15 to 25% of a business and you list it in the US. And so JJ started working with the product a little bit, but it hadn't really yet gained that much popularity until the end of 2019, early 2020. SPACs were kind of on the fringe of financial markets. They had some interesting terms. They hadn't gained popularity because people didn't really understand, how a blank check would work in terms of you just have a publicly traded company that has cash sitting in a bank account waiting for you to acquire a business. So he got familiar with it. And then we kind of talked about it a little bit, but not in a ton of detail over the course of our sophomore year. And then I was looking, to try to figure out what I wanted to do sophomore summer. And he said, why don't you come work at Chardin? I worked there last summer. I'm sure they'll love you. And so I interviewed, and the analyst there happened to have been a UPenn tennis player. So it's a small world where that all ties in. And so I interviewed a few rounds with them and ended up getting the job and going to work for Chardin. And so then I got introduced to the SPAC as a product. And this is still where, it's not really particularly popular yet in the US or in any market internationally. But we started to understand how it works and what it looks like. And we said, this is really interesting. I wonder if it's being best utilized the way it's being utilized in the U.S. And I wonder if there's other markets where you could get more value. You could really use the SPAC as a solution to a problem. Where maybe there aren't people in the space, et cetera. But we kind of tabled that, did our banking. We considered it, but we didn't really. Rosehill had not yet even remotely taken form. I think we'd actually come up with a name, Rosehill, but no idea what business it would be. So, and in one of those late night sessions, which I'll also mention, sometimes there's some drinking, and we'd and not only were we talking Rosehill, but we were speaking in Spanish because I spoke some Spanish in high school, and I ended up going abroad to Madrid, and so we're doing a lot, and this is all it'll all come together here in a second with the Spanish and the whole nine yards. And so we were doing all of that, and continue to work. And I went on to work at a boutique investment bank called Guggenheim Securities in New York, doing biotechnology and biopharmaceutical banking. I did that my junior summer, then did that straight out of college. JJ worked for Steve Cohen's hedge fund. Steve Cohen, you guys may know, people say he's the basis for Bobby Axelrod in the show Billions. That's the story. Don't quote me on that. I don't know exactly. I don't want him coming after me or anything. But he's a prolific investor who's been very, very successful. An interesting character. And JJ worked for his credit derivatives fund in Europe and in Latin America. And then he went back and worked at Chardin, and I was working at Guggenheim. And so we kind of had our process where we were doing our own things. And I think, banking, it's pretty well known over the course of the last year. The Goldman 13 have been really famous because they came out and kind of exposed the conditions of investment banking. And I mean, I'm not going to say, it's some like horrific conditions, but I mean, you work 100-hour weeks. That's part of the nature of the job. And, you'll go Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. to Thursday, at midnight, right? And things like that. And so we were doing that. And JJ came to me in January, or we came together because we're still good friends talking. I'm working from home, and he is going into the office out in Connecticut. He's actually reverse commuting. He lived in New York, and he's reverse commuting out because he thought he was supposed to be working in New York. But with COVID, there were restrictions in New York. His firm still wanted people in the office, and Connecticut had lighter restrictions. And so he was going to the office and reverse commuting out there. And that's another important aspect. I'll say without COVID, I mean, obviously it's been a horrific situation for so many people across the U.S. and across the world. But without COVID, our business wouldn't exist. And so I think it's a little bit of an aspect of trying to make the best, finding opportunity in adversity is what I think you would say. And so I'm working from home, actually, sitting right here. And JJ is going to the office, and we get together, and he says, and tell me if I'm rambling here, because I know it's a long background of a story.
You're doing great.
So I'm here, and JJ and I are chatting because we're very, very good friends. Actually, over the course of COVID, when we got let out of school, I graduated in May of 2020. JJ actually couldn't go back to Peru; they shut down the border. So we just drove 14 hours through the night, and we're living at my house for 6 months until he went up. So he'd already lived here with the family all 9 yards. And we start talking, and he says, what do you think about a Latin American SPAC? And what do you think about, the potential of, raising one? And at the time, this is in early 2020 when the SPAC market was really, really hot. And a lot of SPACs were coming to market. Hundreds of SPACs were coming to market in different industries, verticals, geographies, things like that. And I said, I think it could be really interesting, but we need to flesh out the details. And I would say at this point in time, when we started talking about it, the likelihood of success was less than 0.1, without a doubt, less than 0.1%. And I had some other things I was interested in doing too. I now am a 1/3 owner in a direct-to-consumer mattress company. Let me just plug it real quick, King and Queen Mattress Co. Take a look, luxury direct-to-consumer product. But I was looking at doing that, and I was kind of figuring out things where I said, I understand the value of banking, but doing the work from home where you don't really even have the camaraderie of being in the office at 3 a.m. with like another analyst or an associate, and you're not even really getting to know the people you're working with, makes it to where it's a really brutal situation to be working at 4 a.m. sitting here by yourself, the whole 9 yards. And so it's kind of like, where can the whole idea of going to banking in the first place was it provides a good stepping stone. You learn a lot about interesting businesses. And you kind of figure out, how does this industry run? How does this industry run? And the long-term goal was to go into entrepreneurship. And if I would have had I said from the beginning when I went in, if I have a good idea, I'll leave and go pursue it. But it was a good opportunity to kind of learn the ropes and meet interesting people in New York. And this goes back to without COVID, I probably would have done 2 years of banking and private equity or whatever else. And so we start working on it iteratively. And I think I can say this. I don't know if Guggenheim would be upset, but we were definitely working on it while I was working at Guggenheim. Obviously, we didn't have an LLC formed. We didn't have anything like that, and that would have been impossible as an investment banker because I would have been in the office until 3 or 4 in the morning. So there's no way I would have been able to be working on the materials alongside JJ. And JJ is zooming in and talking to me as well. If he misses the 1 a.m. train back to New York, he's sleeping overnight underneath his desk. And so I have some funny videos, Blaine, maybe I'll send you 1 or 2 later, where we're zooming each other working on our materials at night because we're both getting off at 1 or 2 in the morning. So we're working on Rose Hill from about 2 to 6 or 2 to 6:30 in the morning most nights. So we get off and then we'll get up and start the banking around 8:30. So that's kind of the beginning of the really long weeks. And the crazy is we're zooming and JJ ends up buying a sleeping bag. He has shampoo, conditioner. There's a gym downstairs, so he's showering in the morning, whole 9 yards. And he would just crash underneath the desk. And they didn't know that he was sleeping there either, because a lot of people get off earlier than that, especially the more senior people, and they're going home. And so they just thought he was just an extremely hard worker. He's the first one in the office every morning, which he is an extremely hard worker, best business partner you could ask for. And so we're working through the iterations, and we're starting to flesh out, wow, this is actually really valuable. The SPAC's product is really interesting because it provides a direct listing to a business, and it's in the U.S. Oftentimes a lot of businesses that were getting acquired could have pursued a traditional IPO. They were large enough to do so. There weren't really hurdles to them pursuing a traditional IPO. It could have been cheaper for them. Who knows? They were doing it because of certainty and because of speed were the main reasons. And sometimes you're getting an improved valuation, which there's technical reasons for that I won't go into. And so we said, I don't really know that this is the right type of business or this is the best way to use this product, but the product's definitely here to stay. There's 400 SPACs active worldwide. Like there's no way it's going away. Now there's over 465. And it was like, regardless of if there's a pullback in the market or whatever else, this is going to be something that's going to continue to exist. And we had a few opinions on it. And now that we actually have our own, I think our opinions carry some weight versus then when they carried absolutely no weight. But it was that, there are some businesses that aren't really fundamentally public ready. So there are some SPACs that are acquiring businesses that are, rocketry companies that just have a team of scientists. They're not pre-revenue, they're pre-concept. So they haven't even built a rocket yet. And they're going to take a business public at a multi-billion-dollar valuation and fund, building the first rocket, claiming that it's going to be built in 2025 and first year of revenue in 2026, and they're going to do 20 billion in revenue in 2030. And nothing against, I'm a huge believer in SpaceX, Blue Origin, the whole 9 yards, but that's more of a VC or probably a growth private equity investment. I'm not sure that that's a business that's ready for, a quarterly filing, that really their focus needs to be on quarter to quarter what's going on, that's going to be able to follow on and raise more money in public capital markets. And that's what we thought fundamentally. And then the other aspect was in Latin America, the markets are just extremely inefficient and illiquid. And it's not to say, there's very, very few IPOs. In the last 5 years, for example, across Mexico, Chile, Colombia, and Peru combined, there have been fewer than 20 IPOs compared to over 1,600 in the US. And that's not to say that there aren't public-ready businesses across all of those countries that are, profit-making companies that have been profit-making for a long time, or or they're not even profitable. They're growth businesses, but they have, the right growth story. They could be a publicly traded business. It's not to say any of that. It's really problems with the actual the efficiency of the local markets themselves. There aren't the retail investor penetration. There's not the robustness. The U.S. market just has so much international capital. It has so much retail. It has so much institutional investors. It's so developed and efficient. And so the markets are just kind of inefficient. And so we said, well, the SPAC is a product. A lot of these businesses are really great businesses, and there's great private equity sponsors. You have a SoftBank, and you have Tiger Global, and you have Temasek investing, billions and billions of dollars. You have the Canadian Pension Plan, with a $22 billion fund, investing billions and billions of dollars in the region. And there's really nowhere for these companies to go.
Irrational exuberance?
When it comes to killer wine at drastically low prices,
30 to 70% off retail and free shipping.
we live for that here at Last Bottle Wines. Whether you went long or short on GameStop, you'll need a glass of something terrifically tasty.
And we've got the goods.
Last Bottle is a daily wine site based in Napa, California.
One wine every day.
At Black Swan event prices.
Usually 30 to 70% off.
Until poof, it's gone. Whether you're a pound-the-table type,
think ultra crisp, quaffable Sauvignon Blanc,
or a dividend aristocrat,
Burgundy, or Napa Cab,
there simply is no better place to buy wine on the web.
and they always have free shipping.
Last Bottle has a deal just for Penny Lane listeners. Use promo code PENNY
That's PENNY.
to save 10% off your next order with Last Bottle.
The code is good for one order and one order only, and it expires March 11th, 2022.
So head over to lastbottlewines.com today. That's lastbottlewines.com.
It's one thing if you're a company that skyrockets from 400 million to 3, 4, 5 billion, and then you can go pursue a traditional IPO in the US, and JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley will line up to come down to Latin America and parade you around, NASDAQ and the whole 9 yards. But if you're just a rock solid 700, $800 million company that's throwing off profit, that has a good growth story, et cetera, Goldman Sachs isn't coming down to Latin America to help you with your IPO. It's not going to happen. The fees aren't there. They're worried about drumming up the investor interest. They're worried you might be an orphan stock. You're not going to get the research coverage you need to trade in the aftermarket, et cetera. And this is a pretty known problem. We built a team around this problem, and so that's some of the fundamental, the investment thesis of it is there are really great businesses that don't have access to capital markets or injections of capital, and the SPAC as a product provides a true solution to those companies. It provides them access to American institutional equity and debt. It provides them access to a listing on American markets, which it would be very difficult to pursue a listing in American markets, and it would be unattractive to pursue a listing on local markets for the most part. I can talk about Brazil a little bit. It's a little bit of a different market. It's very cyclical. They have significantly more IPOs than the rest of Latin America. With that being said, they just canceled 80 in the last 2 months, because the market pulled back against them because of governmental situations and an upcoming presidential election. And so we kind of went from there and we said, okay, I think we've got a good thesis. We need to now gather the real hard data that's going to back up what we're saying. And much more importantly than that, we need a management team. We need a board. We need sponsors. We need people that are going to give us credibility as two 23-year-olds that are wanting to raise. At the time we started at 50 million, and then we went to 100 million, and then it ended up being 150 million. And so one thing that I do really find important that I want to point out is that JJ and I have an incredible vision and long-term belief in Latin America and the growth of the region. We believe that it's really well poised to kind of we think Southeast Asia was a model with the Tigers and the 20% year-over-year growth for 15, 20 years, and that really Latin America has the opportunity, especially with technological convergence, to really reach that critical mass and start growing really rapidly, start getting international investment, et cetera. And so we believe in that really fundamentally. But with that being said, we weren't kidding ourselves when we started the process, and we wouldn't say to anybody, we are experts in investing in Latin American companies. There's no way, right? And that's an important aspect, because I think, a big part of our role here is we understand the SPAC as a product really well. We believe that we have, and had at the time we were building this, a really strong investment thesis, but we recognize that we really would need a strong team to execute on what we were saying. And so I think one reason that's important is because we've had some interesting feedback. I think we've actually gotten a lot of support from public media, which has been really great. But some people have said, comparing it to Reddit meme stocks and things like that, saying,
Yeah.
what do these two 23-year-olds know about investing in these businesses? They're just writing hype or whatever else. And, if it was just us saying we're raising $140 million and we're going to go buy a business in Latin America, they would be probably correct, right? I consider us to be smart guys and extremely hardworking guys, but you really need to fundamentally understand the market. And so that's when we started building a team. And so I think this kind of goes back to the COVID aspect. Historically in Latin America, you really, the face time and meeting and getting to know someone is extremely important. And oftentimes it's a multi-year process of courting for either an acquisition or just for bringing somebody on your management team or your board. You need to know them really well fundamentally. And I don't think that that's a bad system. I think it's a good system, but that wasn't going to work for us in our timeline. And also, our capital constraints in terms of being able to go and meet 100 different people across Latin America to build a team. And so what ended up happening is kind of in iterations, I was lucky to be working from home because I could take some of these phone calls. And so, in the late afternoon or whatever else, I would, kind of sneak away from the banking related work and talk to, kind of ex private equity guys, ex operators of multi-billion-dollar companies in Latin America, current or ex investment bankers in the region who really understand deal making, and say, hey, look, this is what we're doing. Investors across the U.S. as well, and say, hey, look, this is what we're doing. It's still an idea. These are our materials. This is what we're building. Whole 9 yards. In the beginning of it, right, getting the momentum is the hardest part by far, because when you have $0 and you have no management team and no board and you just have a really good idea, it's kind of like you're pitching out of thin air. And so we were lucky that we had a number of individuals in the U.S. kind of early on that really believed in the story and kind of got behind us. And we, it's funny, we did a bit of crowdfunding for our risk capital, which is unusual in the SPAC market. So the risk capital, just for everybody out there who doesn't know SPACs that well, is the capital that pays for the administration of the SPAC. So it pays for the underwriting bank, the auditors, the legal counsel, all of those different pieces that you need to really run the operation. And then the $143 million we raised on public markets will eventually go to the final entity that we acquire. But we can't touch any of that I couldn't run away to Thailand without money or anything like that. And I couldn't pay it out in dividends or anything. It has to be used for the business combination. And so you need that risk capital in order to fund all of these different pieces. And so we started that. And then we started talking to, we started cold emailing. So JJ's from Lima, Peru. And so he had a network in Peru specifically of individuals kind of, he was a big tennis player. People went when he's home, he's kind of a national icon. He played for Peru in the Olympics, in the Junior Olympics, Junior Davis Cup, all of those different things. So, he had some connections with some people who would always play tennis with him when he's back, and, familial or whatever else, and kind of got a baseline in terms of a few kind of high, but people who really understand the market or operated large businesses in Peru to give us a little bit of, to give us some feet. And so one of the first guys who came on our board is a gentleman named Felipe Morris. Felipe is now on our board to this day. He was the CEO of Intercorp, which is the second largest conglomerate in Peru. It's a guy named Carlos Rodriguez Pastor's business. He is, worth probably $5 to $7 billion. So one of the wealthiest men kind of in the Andean region. And so he ran this business, which is, a tens of billions of dollar enterprise. And he said, okay, I see where you guys are coming from. And I totally agree. I mean, when I was doing M&A for Intercorp as a CEO, it's difficult because, the valuations just aren't there for these businesses. And then when you want to go raise capital to go fund your growth, the capital isn't really there. It dries up, et cetera. And you also had COVID where even more capital was drying up. And so, okay, this is interesting. I'm interested in getting behind it. And then we're talking to management, and it's a chicken and egg type thing where, you need the board members and the money to get the management, and you need the management to get the board members and the money. And so everything relies on each other. So there's a little gamesmanship here where we're like, oh, well, we have Felipe Morris coming on, but, we now have this other guy who, we're very confident. We already talked to him. It looks like he's going to come on. And we're kind of telling another board member at the same time that this board member, is pretty confident. It looks like he's going to come on. And we're kind of telling him, oh, if he comes on, then you're going to pull 9 yards, and kind of working that direction a little bit. And we're, getting together with potential management members. and saying, I'll also have you, I'm working full time at this point too. Around this time, we closed a $7.2 billion transaction and acquisition, which is a pretty major. It's one of those type of things where you do, you string together a bunch of 120-hour work weeks.
Yeah.
And so, we went through the iterative process. I'm happy to go into more detail, but we went through the iterative process of kind of getting these guys behind, our investment thesis and kind of building this management and board, and then bringing on the sponsors. And it was an intensive process, and we got more and more momentum, and then it became clear, it's not really possible to continue doing this while doing the banking. And so I left my job. I'll say, one thing I know I've bragged about JJ a lot, but I'll continue to brag about him because he's a really incredible person and an amazing business partner as well. Is at the beginning of this process, he does not have an American citizenship. For him, if we failed in this, it's quite plausible that he could have been deported back to Peru after a year or so, because he was being sponsored for his visa by his bank, and so the bank he was working for. And so, he really was like, he felt really strongly, if you're going to quit and do this full time, then I'm going to regret for the rest of my life if I don't quit and do this full time too. And I convinced him for weeks and weeks to not quit and let us get a little further in the process, et cetera. And then about a month later, he's finally like, you know what, it's worth it. I'm doing it. And he left his job. And then we had a lot of interesting, debacles in the interim. But we went on the process from there. He went from his job, and we continued, and we managed to raise the capital and bring on some great management board members, and then we recently IPO'd. And there's a lot more to the story than that, but I don't want to tell the whole story. I was like, maybe if you guys have any questions or anything, I'd love to cover it and talk to you more about what we're doing.
I kind of have a question about JJ.
Sure.
So what's going to happen with his citizenship now? Is there a race against the clock with that?
So JJ is currently in the application process for what's called an extraordinary individual visa.
Ooh, I like that.
Yes. It's an interesting, so he was being sponsored for a normal visa, which has it's 1/3 of people that get sponsored get it. And when he left, we couldn't sponsor him because of the way the visa works. And so the extraordinary individual visa has a number of requirements. It's things like you need to be published in a major publication of your industry, be part of organizations with selection criteria that represent your industry, have an improved salary or compensation compared to peers, things like that. There's 8 different things, and you have to, I think it's 3 or 4 of them that you have to fulfill. And he is in the application process now. So he applied for a visa, and while it's processing, he's good to stay in the States. His former visa was good through, I think, November. And so he's in the process of applying for the extraordinary individual visa now. He fulfills most of that. I think he's right now writing an article for Forbes, actually, which is pretty cool. And so he's in the iterations of that. But yes, it was an intense process where, at one point it was like, if we don't IPO by the end of October, it's looking pretty gnarly. And then we IPO'd October 15th. So that was interesting. Actually, I have my little NASDAQ. I don't know if you can see that, but that's our
yes.
That's our little guy. So, but yeah.
So now that, I guess we don't know, and certainly have seen in the markets recently that nobody really knows exactly what's going to happen with COVID and the new variant. Do you have any aspirations to move or set up any kind of office location or anything like that? Are you very content right now just staying in Atlanta? And
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll say that definitely with the new variants and everything, it's been the markets have, of course, been. I know you follow them very closely, Blaine. They've been all over the place. We're lucky, actually. Rose Hill's trading pretty well, so we're one of about 15% of SPACs that are trading over $10 prior to announcement of acquisition. So we're happy to say that.
That's awesome. Yeah,
Um,
congratulations on that. Really.
thank you. We're excited. It's really, I think, more of a kind of a tell on some confidence in the market and in the team and the thesis, because I mean we haven't announced an acquisition, so it's still just cash sitting in a bank
Yeah.
account, gaining treasuries. So we're looking at potentially moving to Miami in the new year. I think that's probably pretty likely. It's interesting in Latin America. A lot of families move to the States, or specifically Miami. There's there's even ones whose operating businesses are across the region. In some places, it's almost the de facto capital of Latin America. So even if they don't live there, people go and visit quite frequently and things like that. So I mean, we've had some companies that we're talking to say, hey, even if you're not, or they're like, if you're in Miami, you don't need to come down and visit us in Santiago or Bogota. Well, we will at some point anyways. We'll just come to Miami because we want to we want to go to Miami.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and so that's a good usage of resources for us. Most of our investors are based out of New York and the Northeast. But with that being said, Miami probably makes sense as the next step for us in terms of where we'll set up shop. And it's also really easy. The international airport flies directly into most of the major cities across Latin America. Not that Atlanta doesn't have a great international airport for doing that, but Miami is, a couple hours closer or an hour and a half closer. And it just makes it, it makes it easier for us. So we're probably going to move down there at some point next year.
Cool. So outside of moving, what do the next 6 months look like for you?
I would say in terms of our business, what we're working for right now is our expiration is January of 2023. And so we would like to have kind of an LOI, which is a letter of intent giving a general valuation for the business, signed in the next, I would say 3 to 4 months, potentially as much as 6 months, so that we can begin the process towards closing. And so the iterations there are, we as we go, you get more advanced with these different companies we're talking to, and we still meet new companies every day. We have some that we're more advanced in our conversations with, of course, as we IPO'd a month and a half ago. And so I think over the course of the next 2.5 months, it'll be a lot of doing financial due diligence on these companies, really getting into the models, understanding how they operate, what differentiates them, why, for example, there might be a valuation arbitrage between their business listed in Latin America or their business trading in Latin America, or even in private markets in Latin America and listed on the U.S., where one thing is, even with this COVID pullback, which we've seen in the last couple of weeks, multiples in the U.S. market are the highest that they've been since probably the .com era. Mm-hmm. So it's become very difficult to find value in U.S. markets for U.S. companies. And people joke, and I'm sure you see it quite often, value investing's dead. Warren Buffett has no idea what he's talking about. The whole nine yards. And I still think that there's a decent amount of value investors. I think there's really interesting growth companies out there, but I still think there's a good amount of value investors who really want to fundamentally value some of these companies, or looking for growth somewhere new. Mm-hmm. And so with COVID, we're seeing a really interesting opportunity in Latin America where these businesses, a lot of them are trading at depressed multiples and at a discount to their U.S. counterparts, or to their U.S. listed counterparts that are operating in Latin America. And so we're seeing a good opportunity here to provide value to those businesses, and also to American investors to really get in on the I would say the ground floor, but in an early stage of really interesting growth businesses, and not just businesses that are just widget manufacturers, some of which are just widget manufacturers that just do what they do really well and can grow into markets, but also many that that could be fundamentally transformational for Latin America, and do part of what I was talking about earlier on in the podcast in terms of really revolutionize some of the ways business is done, or the way consumers have access to credit or with access to capital. I think there's really interesting for example, in e-commerce and financial technology. You have businesses now where, if you were in China 12 years ago, the majority of transactions in person were being done in, physical cash. And now you can pretty much go to any street vendor in, Shanghai, Beijing, Wuhan, and they not only accept, but they prefer WePay, which is their, kind of like Apple Pay in the US or whatever else. And, there's more than one mobile phone to every person in Latin America. And so it's really interesting when you look at financial technology, there's an opportunity here to provide access to credit, access to bank accounts, access to some of these things that Americans, for example, take for granted, but that are really important to your ability to, for example, start a small business, right? You want to start, your local mom and pop shop, you need access to some sort of credit line. You need access to some sort of bank account, things like that currently don't exist. And technology is providing access to those. All you need now is a cell phone. I mean, one of the really interesting spaces is education technology. You have this huge population of over 650 million people across Latin America, and in a lot of the rural areas, that access to education is really poor. And now, in the technological age, you have people who can come from any background, from any place, who can teach themselves how to code, how to understand financial markets, how to do all these different things through the internet, and then can go on and, who knows what type of benefit they could be to the region. And so now with, educational technology, again, all you need is your phone to get access to so much really interesting and, important knowledge. So there's a lot of ways where, this injection of capital could really be transformational. And we think that, there's ways to really, there's a great return potentially for American investors, but there's also, an ESG aspect where you can really do something that's beneficial to a lot of the people across the region. So.
That's fantastic. I love that piece of the story. That's really great. I know that I've kept you longer than I said I would. You are an impressive man. This is an impressive venture that you have done. I'm so thrilled to know you, and I appreciate your time for coming on the podcast very much.
Blaine, it's been an absolute pleasure. If you ever call me again, I'll get JJ involved too, and he can tell his story from the LATAM angle of really growing up in Lima. I mean, even learning English later on, and now kind of some of the stuff that he's got a pretty amazing story. So if there's ever interest, you let me know.
Love to have JJ on, and we just finished our 50th episode. And
congratulations!
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
the
good.
Podcast is in a weird place where I've interviewed so many traders and people like that, and we're transitioning a little bit from trading to just like business and hustle and growing a business and chasing a dream. So as we go through that transition, I'd love to have JJ on.
Yeah, absolutely. Would love
to.
Maybe
me next time.
Hopefully, I'll see you soon, sometime in person. And again, thank you so much for having me on today. Always available. So.
All right. Thank you so much. Hey, Kate. Hey, Justin.
Hey, Blaine.
Hey, Blaine.
What do you have there?
We got this box in the mail, this big brown box, and it says on the back, this package contains alcohol.
The best kind of package.
Ooh.
Very excited.
We opening her up?
We're going to open her right up.
A little unboxing. Hope you guys like this ASMR.
This package...
It really was a zip.
This package comes with like the egg crate in it with 3 bottles of wine perfectly protected.
This is serious business. Ooh, and they're pretty bottles.
We got a proprietary blend. We've got
Wait, show me the blend.
We got a proprietary blend.
Okay, it's sort of like blown out. Zoom out.
Fancy dinner party wine.
Oh, yeah. Like
then
that.
We've got a nice Santa Maria Valley Pinot.
Ooh,
love a Pinot.
A little Pinot. Love that.
Third bottle is called Sleeper Cabernet 2018.
Great. You drink it
right before bed. I love that label.
Yes. We're very excited. This, no problems with, no concern at all about breakage. It's obviously got here very quickly, dropped off downstairs. The most exciting part of this is that the label says from last bottle, so you know exactly what it is. Very exciting.
Cool. Now, Kate, did you discover the package or did Justin?
Justin discovered it. I picked it up. So I did the heavy lifting.
Okay.
And deserve a glass of wine.
Were you excited when you got it?
Absolutely. Anytime I get wine in the mail, I'm in.
All right. Now, which one of these are you guys going to open first?
I would love to try the proprietary blend from Napa Valley 2017.
Let's do it.
All right. Well, on our next episode, we can watch you guys get into that. But for this episode, we'll just have an unboxing. Last Bottle Wines, thanks for the packaging and the shipping, and everything got there beautifully.
Wildly impressed.
Talk about a cliffhanger for everybody
I
else.
know. We'll see you guys next time.
Cheers.
Hey guys, what do you have there from Last Bottle Wines?
Last Bottle Wine sent us the proprietary blend from Napa Valley, 2017. We got 3 bottles. This is the one that I want to open first.
Ooh, I love a 2017. You got a little vintage on it, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's been aged. Most looking forward to this. I love a blend, and we're going to open it up and we're going to sample it. Again, this should be a bottle that I can't just go into the store and find. So, very excited. We've got this handy dandy opener here. It's called a cork pop.
Ooh.
Put it in. Open.
Woo!
Whoa.
It's a party.
That was a cool sound.
Little from me.
Glug, 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 glug.
Little from the wife.
Quinn, you say hi to
2017 proprietary blend from Last Bottle.
Cheers.
Cheers.
It's giving me flashbacks to the wedding.
Ooh.
Ooh.
I'm getting dark fruit and earthy tones.
Pretty full.
It is. It's very, very good though.
Nice mouthfeel.
But lots of I'm going to go back for more.
I'm going to say this. It was worth breaking dry January.
What else could you want?
Agreed. So, looking up this bottle,
Tell everybody the name.
Yount Ridge.
Yount Ridge.
Yount Ridge.
Y-O-U-N-T.
Y-O-U-N-T.
Ooh, I like that.
And it is, let's see, on Vivino, it's a 4.7. I don't know the rating of it. I can tell you that it was $128 retail per bottle. That is obviously not what we had to pay with Last Bottle. Because
what's the Last Bottle price?
this, as we said, rich and intense and a score of 93. Again, I'm walking down the aisles of my local wine store. I'm not picking this bottle out. It's too expensive. But on Last Bottle and it shows up to the house, amazing.
Can't beat that.
No,
Love
adding
that.
to the collection.
Also, you guys who are Penny Lane Pod listeners can get 10% off one order for one time from now until March. So saving even more.
I don't know how you wouldn't do that based on the types of wine that we're receiving. It's amazing.
Yep. Guys, order the wine, use the code, support the pod. We all win.
Oh, and impress your friends.
Absolutely.
Great point.
Yep.
All right, guys. Well, we'll see you next time. Enjoy that wine. $130 bottle of wine?
It's bananas. How much do these other two cost?
I really like this. I really like this company.
Look these up.
This is a great company. 2018 Sleeper Cabernet from Vivino. That's a $60 bottle of wine.
I mean,
You guys went heavy with the first bottle, the 130.
who knew? I knew it was the nicest looking label.
Yeah, but I don't know if that
knew it.
matters.
I
You
could
can't
feel it.
judge a wine by its cover.
I do every
Sure
time.
you can.
I don't.
It's the only way to do it.
I don't know
Yeah.
that we should do that.
Have you been getting the text from the app? They're very exciting.
Yes.
I like the app.
So once a day, you'll go into the app and they'll have a new featured wine. Basically,
Mhm.
you can choose if you want it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty great.
I also really like the customer service of the holdability of the wine or whatever.
Yeah. It's amazing that you can just be like, okay, you can be my seller for a certain amount of time rather than have it shipped here. If you want to send more than one bottle, you're worried about the temperature, if it's going to send during the hot months. Yeah. Oh, the same sleeper that we just opened. No, the other one was Cabernet. They've got a Sauvignon Blanc 2017 from Napa. It's oaky, dark fruits, blackberry, cherry, raspberry. God, what a refined palate I have, Kate. Your husband.
Basically a sommelier.
I basically just said everything that was right here. So it says it right here on Vivino, balanced blend with long finish. Solid last bottle deal at $35.
That's $100 off.
What?
Yeah.
Hot damn.
Hot diggity dog. Justin, tell me the name of that bottle of wine and how much it cost.
Yeah. Very excited. I am bursting at the seams. Yount Ridge 2017 proprietary blend. It's from Napa Valley. I'm on a wine review website right now, and the retail cost of it is about $130.
I don't know if I've ever had a $130 bottle of wine, just TBH. Yeah.
Yeah, certainly
Okay.
not just on a casual Sunday night.
Right. So last episode we blew through the first sip and that was great. I'm sure our listeners enjoyed it. But let's now have a second sip knowing how expensive it is. And you tell me if that helps with the flav. Oh.
The content you're looking for.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's breathing a little bit. Also,
Okay.
I am prepared to share that on last bottle I spent $35 for this bottle of wine.
That's
That
$100
is
difference.
quite the discount. Okay, well, give it a swirl, Justin. Justin's
do
not
your
even
usual
aerating
thing.
it. Yeah.
It's been aerated. I'm going to let Kate have some, but it's amazing. It's bold. It's long. It's got dark fruit, some cherry, some raspberry, a little oaky. It's pretty good.
It is. It's delicious. And I'm not normally a big, bold red gal, to be honest. And I would drink this over and over.
You know, I've heard a lot of people say like drinks are approachable before. Like a good table red, right? But this would be a great table red.
Yeah, give me some spaghetti of red meat. I'm in.
I have to tell you, I'm kind of salivating. I love a big, bold red wine. It's my favorite. So watching you guys drink this, I wish you could just hand me the glass through the screen.
$100 off retail price for an incredible bottle of wine. And it showed up to our door. Didn't have to do anything.
Last bottle of wine, slow clap.
Slow clap.
Good
Bravo.
wine, good customer
Bravo.
service, good discount. I'm for it.
How do I get my friends a discount, Blaine?
Ooh, you can use code PENNY for 10% off one bottle between now and March 11th, 2022.
New year, new Blaine. I'm excited to get my friends on it because I'll buy some bottles when they come over. They'll have some of mine. They have separate tastes when I go over there. And we'll always be drinking good wine no matter what. So the days of $2 Chuck are behind us.
I actually think my boss is very pregnant and she has been missing wine the past 9 months. So this might be her delivery present.
Boom.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And you just stroll in with like a $130 bottle that you paid $30 for.
Exactly.
And you're like, you're a good friend. You're a good friend,
Exactly.
a good boss.
I think I've got a promotion in the future thanks to
And
last bottle.
Anytime I get a gift of wine, the first thing I'm doing is looking up how much it cost. You need to know,
100%.
And she'll do that and be like, big spender.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you start with the score, then you move to the price.
I'm straight to the price.
Okay.
We differ there.
Okay. All right. Well, you guys go decant that beautiful bottle of wine, and I hope that you get on a little Ted Lasso and sip it on into the evening.
I think we just might.
Got it.
Woohoo.
Thanks, Last Bottle.
Thanks, Last Bottle. All right. We'll see you guys soon. Bye. Thank you to our producer, Joel Edwards and Chesley Lowe for the banjo music. Please like, subscribe, and share this on social media. We appreciate you guys.
By accessing this podcast, you acknowledge that the Penny Lane podcast makes no warranty, guarantee, or representation as to the accuracy or sufficiency of the information featured in this podcast. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general information only, and any reliance on the information provided in this podcast is done at your own risk. This podcast should not be considered professional or financial advice. Unless specifically stated otherwise, the Penny Lane podcast does not endorse, approve, recommend, or certify any information, product, process, service, or organization presented or mentioned in this podcast. And information from this podcast should not be referenced in any way to imply such approval or endorsement. The third-party materials or content of any third-party site referenced in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the opinions, standards, or policies of the Penny Lane podcast. The Penny Lane podcast assumes no responsibility or liability for the accuracy or completeness of the content contained in third-party materials or on third-party sites referenced in this podcast, or the compliance with applicable laws of such materials and/or links referenced herein.